Welcome back, everybody. Very cool show today. We're interviewing a couple guys that are official UFO hunters, like legit boots on the ground guys. They have all kinds of gear and like 9 cameras on a rack, every spectrum you can imagine, and they fly all over the world. And I think they've been doing this at least a dozen years, something like that, Jason.
Yeah, something around that. Yeah, they've been at it for a bit.
Yeah, and so basically, it's Rob Freeman and Mark Mcnabb. They host a YouTube page called Rob Freeman UFO World Explorer, and they're going to chat with us about some of the cool things they've seen, different parts of the world, the reception they get when they go to these places, and what kind of technology they're using, and how they sort of take a science mind and are actually trying to help capture things that the average person wouldn't. So, very excited for today's show. We'll be right back after our intro with Rob Freeman and Mark Mcnabb.
Let's do this.
And welcome back to UAP Studies Podcast. My name is Louis Borges. Joining me as always, my good friend and illustrious co-host, Jason Gilmet. How are you, buddy?
Good morning, sir. I'm doing very good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. We've got a 4-way panel going on today. It's very cool. A couple of gentlemen that are, to be quite honest, they're doing things I wish I could do with my career and spare time. These are real world UFO hunters. These guys go on expeditions to places that have had sightings or indigenous folklore about these things forever. They go put boots on the ground and try to capture this stuff with really high-tech gear and equipment. And, you know, we're constantly questing for people that are science-minded. We're trying to prove something that we don't even fully understand. And it's easy to debunk something when there's never any evidence and any proof. So it's our goal to try to get more and more of that. And with our recent lineup of guests, you know, guys like Jacques Vallée and Ross Coulthard, and now today with these gentlemen, Leslie Kane as well, and Avi Loeb coming up. So again, that's where we're heading with this. We're trying to figure this out because, let's be honest, the disclosures lately, they're not really getting us further ahead. It almost feels like we're going backwards a bit. And yeah, so we're going to try to do as much as we can to bring good information to people. And our two guests today, we've got Rob Freeman and Mark Mcnabb. So Rob Freeman hosts Rob Freeman's UFO World Explorer page on YouTube, which we highly recommend. He also founded the CSSAA, which is the Center for Scientific Study of Atmospheric Anomalies. So very cool. And we have Mark Mcnabb, a TV producer, documentary filmmaker. He's the owner of Starlight Films. And as a pair, they each take on, kind of like we do. You take half the duties, I take half the duties. Let's put our heart and soul into it and see what we can get out of it. So super excited to welcome to the show today, Mr. Rob Freeman and Mark Mcnabb.
Great
Thank you very much, Louis and Jason. Yep, great to be here.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you.
So we'll try to divvy this up. So it's because I know, Mark, you're injured at the moment and you're feeling bad about the way you look. So you're just a shining, perfect-haired shot today.
Yeah, I got the perfect do going there, right there. That's right.
and Elon Musk knows Rob Freeman's on Starlink, so he's messing with his internet connection. But we're going to do our damnedest to keep this organized and informative. So we'll start with Rob. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your history and what got you into all this.
Yeah, so basically, really, I went through life, went to school and so on. I got involved in real estate sales for 15 years. I then founded a company, London Telecom, which was one of Canada's first long distance companies. I sold that. Got involved with Mark. We did a lot of films together. And it's funny because we were on the set. We were doing a film right here at the house, actually. And it was in between sets when people are just talking, while the actors are getting made up and so on. And people are just chit-chatting and different subjects come up. And somebody mentioned, has anybody seen a UFO? And I said, well, I have. And I told my story. And Mark listened to the story and he was quite entranced by it. He went away and did research for several months. And I don't know if you want me to go back to the very first sighting I had and start
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, it's pretty trippy. I like that story. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was the story I told. There were two stories, and basically I was in Scouts in Sarnia, Ontario. I was 12 years old. It was March 28th, 1966. And it was a church. It was St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Sarnia. It kind of overlooked the river on the west side over to the States. Okay, this is Southern Ontario, right at the bottom of Lake Huron, where Sarnia is across from Port Huron, Michigan. And my mom had says, when Scouts is over, give me a call. I'll come and pick you up. Go outside the church, the back door on Front Street there overlooking the river, and I'll pick you up there. So I went outside when church was over. I called my mom. She said she'd be along in about 15 or 20 minutes. And I went outside and these kids were playing in the street and they said, "Hey, mister, there's a helicopter up in the sky." And I, me with my hat, tie, and shiny boots and belt and all this stuff, I guess I looked like a mister to them. There were maybe 6 or 7. People wouldn't let their kids play in the street at that age now downtown, but they did then. And I looked up and I saw this light moving and I didn't hear any noise. And I said, "Kids, that's not a helicopter." And they said, "What is it?" I said, "I don't know." And I'm watching this thing. The kids disappeared. And it's this bright light that's going from the north to the south, parallel to the river, just basically almost over me, but just over a bit more, sort of over the river. And the crazy thing was when it changed direction, it was instantaneous. And that was immediately when the lights went on in my head. And I thought, my God, I don't know of anything that we have, whether it's Canada or United States, that can change directions instantaneously. If it's a plane, it would have to do a bit of a loop, like a semicircle or a U. If it was a helicopter, it would have to come to a stop, then accelerate back. What was it? So, I was thinking, is this a UFO? And we called them flying saucers back then. And but I didn't know. But I thought, what could it be? Some secret military craft? So I was kind of torn between the two ideas. Maybe there's something the U.S. has that's classified that they're testing. There is Selfridge Air Force Base just 20 minutes down the river on the U.S. side. So I didn't know if it might be something out of there. Anyway, each time that it changed direction, it would come lower. So it started out, I'm going to say maybe 1,000 feet up and maybe 900. And then each time it changed direction, it got lower. And then when it was maybe about 600 feet up, I could see what almost looked like a lens in the bottom. And it looked like the light was coming from behind this lens. And I could see figures moving behind this lens. And I thought, oh my God, the hair went up on my arms. And now I'm thinking, here I am alone. Please, Mom, get here as soon as you can, And then she arrived within a minute later. And it almost looked like it was spinning so fast that it kind of goes the other way or something. And as soon as my mom arrived, I says, "Mom, you got to get out of the car. There's a UFO up in the sky." She said, "Don't be silly. It's a plane or a bird or a balloon or something." I says, "No, get out of the car." So we're sparring back and forth for about 20 seconds. Finally, she gets out of the car. We look up and it's gone. So, things were pretty quiet in the car on the way home. I was disappointed because now I thought that she thought that I was just making all this up somehow. And then I got home and I told my dad and my brother and they just laughed. So I was kind of annoyed and frustrated and, nobody's believing me. So I just went into my room, closed the door, did my homework and went to bed. And then next day's a new day, everything's fine again. And I go to school. Then when I come back home, my mom's all excited and she's got the newspaper open. And she says, "Rob, what you saw last night is on the front page of the newspaper." And over 200 people saw it. And my first thought was, yes, there is a God. And I was so happy because for me, that was like validation that I wasn't lying to my parents. We trust our parents. We hope they trust us. And it's very important that they support us. And I sure didn't feel supported the night before by anybody in my family. And so to get that validation was pretty cool. And I've never worried about it since. Many people have been worried about their jobs over the years. And will people laugh at me? Honestly, I don't care. because I got my validation on the front page of the Sarnia newspaper. So if people question me, I say, well, go to this newspaper. I'll even send you a copy and you look at it. I was just one of 200 people. If you don't believe me, listen to their stories. So that was great. And then the next day at school, my friend who lived across the street from us, he says, Rob, I'd love to see a flying saucer. How could we do that? And I just made it up. I said, well, maybe if we go on the roof of my house on a clear night, we'll be able to see something. So a nice clear night came up with lots of stars, and we, went up to the top of the roof. It was a one-floor home with a very, not a very high-pitched roof. And we had an antenna that has all the X's. It's like a triangle type structure where you can climb up very easily and onto the roof. And we took our, sleeping bags, pillows, compass, flashlight, walkie-talkies, tape recorder, binoculars, original sky watching kit, right?
Yeah.
And we were up there for about 30 minutes, nothing. And this would have been in early April 1966, so it was a little bit cold. And I said to my friend, I said, I don't think we're going to, and I was about to say see anything. And as I said the word see, all of a sudden I got stopped in my tracks. And to the north, there was hundreds of lights that went from the north horizon right across the sky in about a second and a half to the south horizon. And we're just, sitting there on the roof in awe looking at this. It's like, wow, that just seemed like that was up in the heavens. What is that, like a meteor shower or something? What is that, birds? No. And then we're talking what could it be? And 30 seconds later, the same thing from the south back to the north. And it's like, wow. And they seemed to be in the heavens. And it was like a whole fleet of lights that were just infinitely far away in the sky that went across the sky in like a second and a half. So very fast, just boom. And we climbed down the antenna. We went across the street to his folks' place where my folks were having coffee with his mom and dad. And we were all excited to tell them this story. And I thought they would be receptive after being in the newspaper just a few days before. They couldn't care less. So they were more interested in chit-chatting and having their coffee. So we left his place in disgust, went back across to my place and put on Star Trek. That was it. So fast forward back to, a few years ago there, I guess, Mark, would be about 8 years ago now?
It'll be 8 years in February, yes.
Yeah. So back set who was listening to the story. And Mark was interested in the second story. And Mark, this is where I'll let you pick it up from here.
Yeah, this was pretty amazing for me because I had known Rob for several years. At this point, he was telling me these stories. And the first story, it's classic. It's a very classic kind of story. Saw the lights, saw the UFO. It got written up in the paper, absolutely. But being a storyteller, I kind of got pulled in with the thought and visuals of two boys shimmying up the antenna of a house with a little makeshift sky watching kit. It had a very Spielberg kind of feel for me. I don't know, I think it was like 9 years old when I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So I had all, and of course, E.T., so you have all this pull back to these kind of images of two boys wanting to make contact, from the roof of their parents' home. And I got very fascinated by that, very, very, very just one track mind. And as Rob mentioned, I spent several months and I got on, bless Facebook. I got on Facebook and started to bring up all these different groups around the world, pockets of people, whether it be Peru, whether it be Australia, different places in Europe, and got exposed. And I'll say this quickly, I keep the story, kind of brief, but got exposed to more knowledge on what's called close encounters of the fifth kind. And I'm sure anybody that knows the scale, you know, the Hynek scale and the extended scale knows 1 through 7. And I won't get into the other 6, but number 5 deals with bilateral or unilateral communication, direct communication with extraterrestrials. And that fascinated me. I got very into that, and I thought, these are people, individuals around the world that have taken it upon themselves to willingly, with all intent in their heart, to make contact. And I felt that that's what Rob and his friend did that night. I felt that they had made a full attempt and had an experience, a sighting based on that. So after I contacted a whole series of different groups and talked to wonderful individuals all around the world, and they're talking to me about being in the fields, being on beaches, being in jungles and in deserts, doing this, I came back to Rob and I pitched him as a producer, as a friend, and said, I'd like to see us go here and here and here, these different places. And Rob was into it right away. He said, okay, you know, where do we go first? And of course, our first road trip, our first plane ride road trip was into to Area 51, which we're actually going back to in a couple of weeks. We're excited about that. We're telling you guys for the first time. We're going back after 8 years and going to a secret location. And we're excited. We're excited about going there. And that kind of started the whole thing. You know, every year we would be introduced. It's funny when you look at the WMD, the weapon of mass detection, Rob's cameras. It's like, I know how many years we've been doing it. There are about 7 or 8 cameras now, Rob, every year representing a camera. You know, every year we've been doing it. Rob would add thermal or full spectrum or a night vision, because we would get technology and information coming our way. And 16 countries now, 16 countries, over 50 cities. Just added a couple of new countries this year to take it to 16 when we went to Ecuador and Italy. So it's definitely the adventure of a lifetime.
So tell us about some of the cooler thing. I mean, obviously 16 countries, it's more data than we can discuss in this program, but give us some memorable things, like things that made you guys go, wow, like what the hell is really going on? You know, that's where our curious minds want to go. So give us some goods on some of the stuff you guys have found.
Okay. Do you want lights in the sky or experiences on the ground?
Whatever you feel. We got a bit of both. Mix it up for our viewers.
Okay. I guess the Squamish Orb. Everybody knows about that one. That was on a BC expedition, and it was just outside the town of Squamish, BC, British Columbia, which you guys would know about that. And we felt we were going to see something. There were 4 of us, and we really felt, and we found this spot on a logging road that had a beautiful view of the monolith there, the Squamish, what do they call that? The Chief. It kind of goes straight down. It's like a monolith, one of the few.
It's a sheer cliff.
Yeah. And at 10:59, and this was before I used to have all my equipment running. As you know, with so many cameras, that's a lot of gigabytes that it's recording. So I would have everything on, but it wasn't recording. I would, record if something would occur, but I was just near the WMD talking to Mark casually, and Breslin of our group said, "What's that over there?" And I looked, and there was a light moving. Pardon me, it was like a yellowish color light. And I immediately went to the WMD. Which camera first do I turn on? And as I looked where the light was, I thought, my God, I can pick one camera because it's going to be in the woods in just a few seconds. So my immediate instinct was to hit the green night vision zoom camera. So I started the recording on that. I got it aimed up, and I just followed with it. And the sighting is only 10 seconds long. And you see it go right into the woods. And that's where you hear us kind of gasp. It's in the woods. And you can see the trees light up behind it. and the ones light up in front. So, that was pretty exceptional. And we had Dave Palachuk from MUFON research that one out, and he deemed it to be an unknown. It was not the ISS. The ISS had gone through maybe 10 minutes before. And even if it was the ISS, which it wasn't, it wouldn't have been seen at the angle we were at. This was all determined by MUFON and so on, and various other people told us. So,
and it was in the trees, right, Rob? It was in the trees as well, so it couldn't have been the ISS.
It was, yeah, exactly. And if anybody wants to see it, the way YouTube works, when videos get old, it's hard to find them. They take them out of the search engine. They want you to see current content. So I would suggest people just go to our YouTube channel, Rob Freeman UFO World Explorer, and just click on videos and go most popular, and then you'll see it right at the top. Because people have complained to us, they're putting in search terms and they cannot find that video. Well, YouTube doesn't want you to find it. They want you to look at everybody's current material, right?
Yeah.
But you go to our channel and go to videos and go to most viewed, and you'll see it there.
And that's a great video too, because that video actually kind of became the signature sighting. We ended up getting contacted by a producer through CNN, because it became something. It's been in, I think it's been in 3 or 4, maybe even 5 different documentaries now, just because it was, I think it was even in the top 12 of that year of being a complete unknown. So that's pretty exciting for us.
Cool thing about that part of the world too in BC is that's, Bigfoot country or Sasquatch, legends seem to happen. And like ever since we chatted with George Knapp and Colin Kelleher 6 months ago, and they were like, yeah, we used to be nuts and bolts ufologists. Now all this stuff is possible. Poltergeist and cryptids and Bigfoot and orbs. And it's stranger now than it's ever been. But it's, as soon as you said squamish, and I've seen the video, it looks like a green orb, but I think that's because your night vision, you described it as more of a yellowish color, but yeah, you can very clearly see this thing going through the sky, and then it goes into the woods, and you're right, the trees in front kind of light up as it passes, and so do the ones behind, and that's pretty hard to fake in terms of video. Like people have done a pretty good job with CGI and things like that, but to get the lighting angles right on a million branches, that's a lot more time than most people are going to waste to a hoax,
Yeah, and there was no sound with that. And I guess, what did Dave figure out how big that was, Mark?
He put that at between 6 and 8 feet wide.
Okay.
Yeah. That's trippy. That's trippy. So what have you guys been up to as of late? Let's talk a little bit about that, because you guys have been at it again, doing a few trips this year. Let's actually start with Mark. Mark, how did this all start?
Well, Jason, 2022 has been really exciting. Rob and I are always looking to double down on our knowledge and our learning, and everyone has their own approaches, and our approach is we take in all the approaches. We want to be exposed to all the different ways of making contact. And for us, it really started in 2016. The bigger stuff when we went to South America. We went to Peru. We've been to Peru a couple of times, and I'll touch on them both briefly. But while we were in Peru in 2016, we met a gentleman. His name is Sixto Paz Wells, and he's a 40-plus year contactee who has taken the media out to the deserts in Chilca and Playa Yaya and all these different places throughout Peru, because in South America, this is not a it's not a strange topic. I mean, Rob and I went in 2016, and literally we laugh about it because we talked to painters, guys just painting on the beaches of Playa Yaya, painting a cottage, and you come up to them, they don't know who we are. I step back about 6 or 8 feet. Rob starts to talk to them about what you've seen, and the first thing they say is, oh, this light came out of the water and came up and it floated over the water and over the mountain. And it's like a normal Saturday afternoon conversation. This isn't a strange thing for them. This is as normal as anything. It's only, I don't know, guys, maybe we can talk about this near the end of the show or at some point too, but in North America, entirely different understanding of that. So we've enjoyed going back to South America on multiple occasions. We went back again in 2019. Here comes my plug. I'm sorry, it's my 10-second plug. But we did a movie, a full-length factual documentary called Making Contact: Messages from the Andes, which is coming out very early 2023 into different festivals and screenings around the world, and different things that we're doing with that. And we spent time with another contactee, much like Sixto, Ricardo Gonzalez. And we spent 18 days and had so many different experiences with him. Again, it would be just a whole other show. And it made us go back again to Ecuador. And that happened in April of 2022. Again, connecting with more. All I can say is there is a scientific side, and there's also a spiritual side when it comes to consciousness and raising your vibrations and energy levels, and being in very, like you had mentioned earlier about being in indigenous areas, being in sacred areas, early civilization style. This is conducive. There is a natural energy that can have a big part of the phenomenon as well. So Rob and I went to Ecuador, again, experienced some very cool things in Ecuador for sure. And learned a lot through the guys there, that are part of Mission Rama, that do this higher level of consciousness and meditation to make contact. So that was one. And the next one, well, I'll skip over because I know this is a shorter program. We also got the chance to do probably the biggest expedition that we've had the opportunity to do in many years, when we went to Italy. And we spent a considerable amount of time in 2 different valleys. And what's amazing about this is it's a first, because we've not had the chance to talk about this on a podcast. So we're really glad to talk to you guys about it.
Hey, awesome.
It's a cool exclusive, because this became national news in October. We spent time with a gentleman, Alessandro Rosia, I believe. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Who was in the Army. And had many experiences, and then he had a falling out with the government, and with who he was with. It became a criminal case in Italy that he couldn't talk about, but for some reason, suddenly there he is sitting across the table from Rob Freeman, talking and showing pictures we'll never forget, because they're mind-blowing, amazing, groundbreaking pictures. And then we weren't allowed to talk about it. We came back in September. We weren't allowed to talk about it because he's in the middle of this criminal case. But then in October, if you bring him up online, he went for it. He said, forget this, forget the gag order, forget everything. And it became national news. And that was a part of Italy for us, being with him and being with real experiencers that are having real encounters, which is a part of another set of programs that we're doing now under what's called Encounters. But I'll let Rob jump in and quickly talk too about what we saw while we were in Italy.
Yeah, so I guess the very first thing was when we were at Val. Let's see, which one was this, Mark? Val, the one with the cathedral.
Oh, Val Malenko.
We were, and this was pretty neat the way it all happened. It was high up on a mountain overlooking the valley over to a cathedral. Now, this cathedral is hundreds of years old, and there's lots of sightings connected with this cathedral. In all their writings of the cathedral, they talk about all these crafts in the sky, like hundreds of years ago. So that was pretty cool. And we could see across to that. And amazingly enough, in my time lapse on the previous night, there had been a thunderstorm, and we happened to catch in the time lapse a thunderbolt hitting the cathedral, and it's a super fabulous picture. Yeah, nobody got hurt, of course. It just probably hit a lightning rod at the top and discharged to ground safely. But the next night we went up there, and it was raining, and we knew we wouldn't be able to get the equipment out of the car. But we just decided to go for it. We were being spontaneous, and we thought we're open to anything. Because, as we have found out, it's literally maybe 20% about what's up in the sky and the lights. The other 80% is crazy things that happen on the ground and experiences. And, that's a whole nother program. But anyway, it was like through the mountains, it's paved, but there's nowhere to pull over. It's like trees right beside the road. So you literally, if you want it to even turn around, you've got to find just a bit of an opening in the trees, because there's hardly enough space to even turn around. You'd be at risk of another car coming the other way, hitting your car, and there's so many turns. So we were at the corner of one of these, and it was a little vista area. There was a stone wall there, and then when you were there parked in the car, you could see out over the valley and across over to this cathedral. But it was pouring rain, and we're just talking and reminiscing, and we're having fun. Mark and I connected on another level, literally. But we were really enjoying ourselves. And then I said, Mark, it looks like there's a car coming. I see the lights in the trees. You'll see the car in about 4 or 5 seconds, because I happened to look back behind the car and I could see this. Generally, we were looking forward through the dash over across the valley. And all of a sudden, maybe about 6 seconds later, Mark says, well, where's the car? And I look back, nothing. And it's like, well, but the way we saw it light up was like it was just coming around the corner and it lit up the trees. So we didn't really think too much more of that. But then not long afterwards, when we were getting ready to go out, like to leave, I started to back up onto the road. And as I backed up in the other direction, again, I saw all the trees light up as if there was a car literally just around the corner. And I, 4-letter word I said, geez, I better get back. The way the speed that this light's coming, he's going to come around the corner. He's going to hit me. I'm trying to back up onto the road. So I just put it in drive. I went forward and did a big loop around. But as I went around, this was literally just seconds later, that light was gone also. And Mark, maybe you can continue on with the story, because this is where we started questioning what we saw.
Yeah, like it was such a thing, because your mind takes you to the logical place every time, right? I mean, you apply rules to something that you experience, or rules to a light that you see. And the only thing I said to Rob after this happened around the car was, why are we assuming it's a car? Why did we assume it at all? Like from even the beginning, like we are literally defining, labeling that experience, or labeling that light coming up on the side of the car as being a car light based on the mind taking it there and filling in all the blanks. Like, I mean, literally all the blanks, like not one, but all. And that was kind of something we started to laugh about later, saying, well, it's a car light until it's not a car light. And we had experienced that before when we went to Sedona, fast 30 seconds, but where Rob saw a satellite in the sky and he went under his breath, it's just another blah, blah, blah satellite. And then, and then it stopped and sat there. Right. And then he went, and then that was when we coined the phrase, well, it's a satellite until it's not a satellite, especially when the satellite then took out his cellular transmission for the rest of the evening. He couldn't use his cell phone. There was no connection with his cell phone. So then I said to him, well, that was kind of the lesson learned in Sedona. Why could not have applied here? We thought it was a car light because it had the characteristics of a car light, but then it proved to us twice that it wasn't a car light, because we went up the road as far, like, I don't know, a mile, 2 kilometers at least, both sides, no turnaround points, no driveways, thin road. This car would have had to have backed up for 2 kilometers with its lights off to get away from us in less than 2 minutes. Like, this doesn't make sense. If we're going to apply logic, let's apply logic to all of it and say, logically, does it make sense that these lights would just disappear? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, and if anyone's been to Europe, they know the roads, especially in Italy. Like I remember I'm Portuguese by my heritage. So, you get on a bus and it's going down these tiny winding roads there's no way for anything to pass anything, let alone pull a U-turn. These are like, old, like stone walls with like plants growing on them, barely wide enough for two mopeds to pass. And it's so windy and dangerous. You're right. Nobody would ever reverse for 2 kilometers because the risk is somebody would hit you, and they drive like hell in Europe. Like, it's one speed and that's wide open everywhere,
That's it. And the other thing was, Louis, is that in the whole night, I think there was only one other vehicle on that road.
Yeah.
And so literally, if these were vehicles, out of 3 vehicles, 2 turned around out of 3.
Yeah.
Like, nobody ever turns around on those roads. You go until you find somebody's driveway. And then you turn
a car, right? If you're out in the middle of the woods, all you hear are the nature, and you would hear a moped or the exhaust of something if it was a machine.
Yeah. So, we learned our lesson there. Don't assume. Like, as Mark says, don't try to apply rules on what you think it might be. Like, just be open-minded and just watch, just follow the whole experience. But then, Mark, remember what was the next place we went to?
Well, then we went up into even farther north, and we went up to Valcamonica. And Valcamonica is just legendary. I mean, there's just so much activity up there. And we were really fortunate because we got to be with 2 gentlemen who have done a lot of research up there, and they basically facilitate all the evidence, and they facilitate all the different experiences. Our heads were filled. It's going to be a fantastic documentary, again, called Encounters Italy. And it's amazing because, they have the Pizzo, which is the Pizzo, the Monte Pizzo up there. And again, if you bring it up online, it's pretty incredible. And they filled our heads for 5 days. We stayed up in a kind of a chalet. I guess it's kind of like a chalet type of thing up there. And I mean, Rob, you go ahead. You got to tell your story about what happened on the mountain.
Yeah. So each night there was a little village up on the mountain, and there were stories about encounters up in that village. And, we saw some pictures from the Army guy of beings that were filmed up there at that very spot. And so, in the afternoon or evening or whatever, we would kind of hike up to that spot along the road, all of us. And I remember on the second last night, or the last night, whatever it was, I had my cell phone, and I thought it was only at 10 or 20%. And I thought, should I bring in a spare battery? And I can't be bothered to go back to the room to get a battery to plug in. So, we were up at the top, and I was doing some filming, and my phone went dead. And I was just pretending I was talking to the ETs. And I says, okay, guys, you can show yourselves now. My camera's dead. I can't film you anyway. And I turn around and look, and right across the mountain, halfway down, is a classic craft moving across the mountain. And I thought, well, there you go. They answered my request. They knew I didn't have a camera to film with. And I said, and my phone had gone dead. I saw the little wheel turn, and then the phone went dead. And I said to one of the others, I says, wouldn't it be funny if we get back down to the lodge and my phone came back on again? Because, we've had many situations where electronics have gone wonky with this phenomenon. I mean, that's pretty common. Everybody knows about that. We've had entire battery packs go down, phones, everything. Mark's lost his audio channel on his camera just when one of the interviewees is going to talk about things that can happen when you're filming, and so I wouldn't be surprised. So I said, wouldn't it be funny if my phone comes back on again? So I told everybody else what I had seen. That was cool. And we all went back down. Now, we're all wearing hiking boots. And the deal is there's a room. As soon as you get into the lodge, you have to take your boots off because there's cows everywhere. It's free range. And sooner or later, you put your foot in the cow pie. So the deal is at this lodge, no footwear in the rooms. They don't want it smelling like cow poo. So I went into the room to take my boots off. And of course, we, as guys, we keep our phone in our back pocket. And typically I take my phone out of my back pocket before I sit on a wooden bench because I'm worried about damaging my phone, right? So I took my phone out and I look at it and it's on. And I thought, wait a minute, that's what I just said up on the mountain. Wouldn't it be funny if it was on again? And it was. And then I'm telling Marcus about this, and he's now in the room with some others. I go off to dinner, and the others are going to join me in a few minutes. And Mark, say what you saw or what happened to you just moments later.
Yeah, it all happened within a very short period of time. I mean, I was with Felice, one of the group members, and we were in the back room, and Felice was using the washroom, and same thing. He's like, come here. Can you please come here? And I came to him. He said, look, what do you see? And there it was, right over the pizza, like a cylinder style classic kind of disc. And he said to me, you see this, right? Like it's not real unless you have a witness. And Rob and I have always said that too. You have to have a witness. If you're doing it on your own, sure, the mind can play tricks. Let's just say that the mind could play tricks. You could see a light, you could see a refraction of something, you could see anything. But we sat there, stood there, and watched it for, I don't know, 6 or 8 seconds. And again, I have pictures that still blow. Felice still sends me pictures because what they do up there is they have surveillance cameras, security monitors and cameras up there. And Felice has the ability to access this footage, and he still sends me footage and photographs today showing me the different objects that people see in and around that valley. All kinds of things have happened there. I mean, the CIA has come there. I mean, they've had all kinds of different things over the years. So we're going back. We got to go back. It's there's a lot of legends and a lot of understandings that extraterrestrials visit that valley and have made themselves a part of different villages in the past, that they're studying humans. I mean, this is what they're doing. This is the understanding too that Rob that's had with talks with different people too, that I think it was the geological, they're studying the geological formations and stuff too, Rob, I think.
Yeah, there's one group of ETs that are actually, they say, are embedded in one of the villages, and they look just like us, and they're not interested in, these ones are not interested in the humans. They've been studying the geological evolution of the earth for a few thousand years, and they don't care about the humans. These particular ones are more interested in the evolution of the earth, geologically speaking. And Mark, I just want to say too, that same night where I had the sighting and you and Felice had the sighting, we had all kinds of anomalous stuff happen with the phones. Like you mentioned about you all of a sudden were connected to Wi-Fi, and there was no Wi-Fi up there.
Yeah, I'd never had a Wi-Fi signal. Suddenly I opened up my phone and it showed that I had Wi-Fi and I had a connection, but we're in the middle of nowhere and there was no Wi-Fi connection. There wasn't even a router or anything that you could connect to. And that stuff was just happening. It seemed to be happening like every few hours, some kind of strange anomalous experience. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Good technological high strangeness, as one would say, right? Yeah.
Well, you'd think the aliens got to have the best internet. I mean, clearly.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, and I remember that story, Mark. What's the fella Gary King we met in England who does the crop circle stuff?
Gary, yeah.
Yeah, he said that he was researching crop circles, and he was in an area of England where there was no cellular service. And yet, when they stepped into a crop circle, he had full bars on his cell phone and was able to make a call. He steps out of the circle and there's no cell service. So once again, these are all little tricks. They're just little cookies. They're little carrots. We call them cosmic carrots. They're just little things to get your attention, and you're scratching your head and it's like, what? This isn't really logical and normal according to all the stuff we know, like the physics we understand. But there's a lot more to it than that. I'm sure it's going to be all connected with quantum physics as we get into this more and more.
When people find out what you guys are there to do, when you arrive at a new location and you're there, you start talking to people. How receptive is the population to that? Like, do you get a big group of people to come and talk to you? Are they sort of more standoffish? Like, what's the general feeling that you get from these people?
I would have to say, Jason, great question. I would have to say that they're eager. They're very eager to tell their stories, like especially in Italy, more so, in Ecuador as well. But in Italy, I mean, these are individuals that have dedicated 20 plus years of their lives to studying this, and they've become like the grandfathers of, the I don't know what you call that, the bearers of the knowledge, so they had never opened up to anybody, but they had seen our work. They had a respect for our approach, that we're authentic. We're not trying to sensationalize. We're not trying to overhype, cue the dramatic music style kind of project, where it's not a fear-based or a scary alien kind of extraterrestrial. Like, to hear these gentlemen talk about the villagers, and to literally have one guy say, well, this woman was in her kitchen and a gray extraterrestrial came to her window and poked his head up, and they laugh. It's a full understanding that they go to these villages. At least this is one theory, that they go to these villages because it's a safe place. It's a safe place. It's a quiet place. It's not like a big city. They know that they can come in. No one's going to freak out. No one's going to get too crazy. Sure, there's a little bit of a, whoa, what just happened? But there's still this understanding. So when we come in with all the respect in the world. We respect the environment. We respect the people. We respect the stories. We're not there to cast judgment. We're not there to do any of that. And I think that just continues to open up some pretty incredible doors. I mean, we already have some amazing things lined up for 2023 in areas we've never got the chance to go to through COVID. And a lot of that is because of how we respect and approach the topic and the people.
Nice.
What about your gear? What do you like? You say you got, what do you call it? The WMD, the weapon of mass detection. So what kind of gear are you guys using to capture this stuff?
Yeah, it's affectionately known as the WMD, weapon of mass detection. And it's everything from military thermal. Now, it's like one shade off of military. Military, it has to be totally waterproof, and you pay, a lot more for that. But the equipment that I have is military equipment. It's just not the extra stage to make it waterproof. Don't need it waterproof. We don't go filming in the rain. It's a lot cheaper. But there's the thermal, the black and white thermal, which picks up heat, and we've seen things in that. We saw an actual classic saucer with a dome in Australia. It was Damien Knott that happened to be looking through it at the time, and we were recording it. And as the ETs would have it, when we went to play back, we had all the audio, but the video was snow. Mark's got the whole thing documented behind the scenes. So that's the thermal. We have the green classic night vision, which is near infrared, and it's the green. It's also in wide angle for just having a scope in your hand, and then the zoom for on the tripod. Then there's full spectrum wide angle for spotting and full spectrum zoom. Then there's visible. And then we have a separate, so there's like 7 to 9 cameras on the big rack. Okay, and all these are running all the time now. After the Squamish incident, because I only got it on one camera, I leave all the equipment running the entire night. And then if we have something happens, I'll mark it down, and even I'll go through all the footage anyway to see if there's something, but it takes to do that. Is just time lapse. So it's infrared time lapse and visible time lapse. And shortly, I'm sending the camera away to have the filters taken out and the ultraviolet filter put in. So then there will be 3 on that. There will be the infrared time lapse, visible time lapse, and ultraviolet time lapse. They say there is some stuff that can be seen in ultraviolet and no other wavelength. So we have all that stuff. I do have stuff that you don't see very often. Also, I've got digital radar. So it's a low powered chirp radar. So you can stand right in front of the dome and it won't hurt you. Okay, so it's a lot of stuff to take on an expedition. So I generally only take that if we're driving to an expedition. I've taken all that on the airplane, but it's just too much. It's just too much stuff. And you spend half your time setting it up and half your time tearing it down. It's, so I've gotten recently the stuff from Ron Alch, UFO DAP system, which is 2 cameras that are apart, and then you can triangulate, and they sit on tripods, and they are recording all night. And if there's something seen, it records a file. So you'll have a series of files saved on your laptop. So I kind of go through these stages where I'll take on new equipment, but then I'll go through and do a cull. I'll sort of get rid of anything that doesn't seem to be useful. So recently I've gotten more equipment, but we'll see what's useful and what isn't. So it's kind of evolved. It's kind of evolved over the years of what's good. Probably the most useful camera on the whole rack. Well, there's 2. The main one is your night vision zoom. That's the one that caught the Squamish orb. And then I would say the next one is your full spectrum. So there's full spectrum wide and there's full spectrum zoom. Like it zooms right in like 1200 millimeters or whatever. And you could literally see in the windows if there's a craft or something. But the crazy thing is when we were in Peru a few years ago, near Cusco, Peru, just with my iPhone, I captured a very unusual, very detailed craft. And we've shown that to Lou Elizondo, and he thinks. Now, you never know with Lou because he has to dumb down his language when he talks. He's under a non-disclosure, so sometimes he has to talk in code. He can't disclose anything classified. So I don't know whether he knows what it is and is and pretending to speculate, but he says it's the energy imprint of a craft going between dimensions. But it's quite sharp. It is quite sharp, and I think you can find that on our channel, Mark, if you put in Cusco craft.
Yeah,
if you use that as a search term.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Cusco craft.
Yeah, and it's so sharp that I've been on UFO Facebook groups that I've gotten booted out of because people think I'm using Photoshop. Well, it's real. It's what I captured on the iPhone, and it is real. But most people expect UFO footage to be very bad and grainy. And so if you have something that's unusually sharp, people usually discount it. I mean, from time to time, people do get good pictures. It is more rare, but they do get it. And we happen to get it with the Cusco craft.
Yeah, there's also that there's a gentleman that kind of kept seeing a UFO craft. I think this is Romania or Czechoslovakia or something like that. But he zoomed in on this craft one night, and you could see almost 2 entities in the front. Yeah. I forgot the location exactly and the name of the gentleman in question.
It was like a Delta craft, right? With a window, you could see 2 entities standing in there. It's a lot of people rip it apart and say it's nonsense, but
yeah,
cool either way.
It was faked. He did a pretty good job because to be able to zoom in like that and to capture that was, insane. And I keep thinking that you guys with your rigs are bound to capture something like that as well. And you guys were mentioning too before that, it's nice to bring this equipment along, but after that, there's the logistics of carrying this stuff up the mountains that you guys are going to, spend the night on or something like that. And just the hazardous conditions that, Mother Nature throws at you. And just carrying all this equipment, I mean, that's a lot of work in and of itself. You almost need a separate crew just to help you, right?
Well, and quite often people that come along do help me with this stuff. And we've gotten to the point, Jason, that I get very involved with the technical side, and we generally take half the time where there's no equipment. In other words, okay, I disconnect from all this technical equipment and just try to connect to the ET beings themselves, right? And we've had some pretty fabulous return on that from time to time, like in Australia when we, feel that we made contact with a being there. I think I told the story on one of your previous Podcast. But I get quite involved with all these cameras, and so half the time we will leave all that stuff at home, and I just let that out of my mind and just try to make contact. And honestly, we're getting a lot of messages recently, though, through other people who are very sensitive and so on. And the messages have come to us directly that they're going to let us record sort of more, how would you put it, more direct footage. And we've always been of that view too, that they're going to let us know if we're going to be able to record it. Like, for example, the Squamish orb there in BC, we all felt that we were going to see something that night. We could almost taste it. We just knew. We just didn't know when.
Right.
And it was at 10:59 p.m. that it happened. But quite often when there's going to be something happen, we can feel it. Not all the time, but we do get a sense, and it's quite cohesive in the group. The group all can kind of sense that, yeah, there's going to be something happen tonight.
Nice. Man, an hour flies by so fast. Louis, do you have any final questions for our guest today?
No, I just want to say a big thanks to Rob Freeman and Mark Mcnabb for coming on the show. It's awesome to chat with guys who get the science behind it, but yet still have a little bit of that spirituality as well. And I think that's important. We get comments from people on both ends of the spectrum, like it's UFOs and not, consciousness, and don't go there. And then we have people that say, oh, these are all just angels and there's no such thing. So we have to have a healthy, suspension of judgment with the whole phenomena. I mean, if you're going to keep your opinion in a little box, you're never going to learn anything new. And I think it's important. And the more you guys find, I guess, the more encouraging it is for you. So if people want to check you guys out, where can they find your material?
Oh, the best
Mark?
place to go. The best place to go is definitely the UFO World Explorer YouTube channel. Over 350 videos on there, chronicling the last 7 or 8 years. And obviously Facebook. I mean, we have 2 pages up there now. We've got the UFO World Explorer Facebook page, and we've also got Encounters, which is a new one that we've launched. Very excited about that. My last plug, just because you've mentioned about the spiritual and the science, it's a really cool thing coming out in the new documentary that we did called Messages from the Andes, because I got to create a story that has spiritual and consciousness connected Ricardo Gonzalez pairing up with Rob, who's got a beautiful analytical scientific mind, and to put those two gentlemen together in one full-length film was a complete joy, and I think audiences will love that. And I'll just let you know the exact release date. It's very, very soon. It's within the next month or so. So very excited for that too.
Looking forward to that. Mark Mcnabb, Rob Freeman, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Let's have you guys back on again very soon. Talk about your new documentary when it releases, of course. And
Thanks,
you guys are always welcome on this podcast. It's always open to you.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you
guys.
so much, Jason and Louis. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much, guys.